Welcome to our webinar on benchmarking water and wastewater rates in Arizona, presented by the ESC at UNC and co-hosted by the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona. This webinar is an outgrowth of the 2015 Drinking Water and Wastewater Rate Survey. My colleague, David Tucker, will present the new and improved online interactive Arizona water and wastewater rates dashboard that was developed from the survey data and is available for you to use. We have over 80 people registered for this webinar and a good representation throughout the state. We're so glad that so many of you were able to join us. A little bit about who we are first. David, Tucker, and I work for the Environmental Finance Center at UNC. The ESC is dedicated to enhancing the ability of governments and other organizations to provide environmental programs and services in a fair, effective, and financially sustainable way. We do this by conducting applied research and developing trainings and programs directly for and with local governments, private organizations, and state and federal agencies. We work closely with these partners on a wide range of topics, including new and best practices in financial management, rate setting, planning for, how to pay for capital projects, improving access to and understanding funding sources, and so on. Water and wastewater is a huge portion of our work, and we have lots of free resources available for utilities and agencies to address some of the most common issues that water utilities deal with. The Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona funded the 2015 Rates Dashboard, Research Report, Rate Tables, and this webinar. WIFA funds water and wastewater infrastructure projects in Arizona, and they provide financial and technical assistance throughout the state. We have several representatives from WIFA on the webinar today. At this point, I'd like to introduce Melanie Ford, Technical Program Supervisor, who will talk about the rate survey project.
Thank you, Lexi, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. I also want to thank all of you who participated in this year's water and wastewater rate survey. Many of you heard from us back in the spring when we requested your rate sheets and your annual financial reports. Like last year, we were very pleased to get nearly a 90% participation rate, so thank you again to everyone for taking the time. We greatly appreciate it. For those of you who are ACC-regulated private systems, we actually, for the first time, obtained your data directly from ACC, so that's probably why you did not hear from us this year, but nonetheless are included. I'd also like to thank at this time our partners and supporters in this effort, which is the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, the Northern Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, and new this year, the Water Resources Research Center at the University of Arizona. So for those of you who may be new to this rate survey and dashboard, you might know WIFA better as a funding agency. Like Lexi said, we provide low-interest loans and technical assistance funding for water, wastewater, as well as stormwater projects. But we also do some special projects like this one intended to provide resources for you to assist with utility management and rate setting decisions. The Environmental Finance Center, who is teaching this webinar and has been producing the rates dashboard for the last 3 years, they've been doing this for the past 3 years. However, even if you've seen the dashboard, I can promise you, you will learn something new today. And lastly, I'd like to add, and I'm sure you all would agree, that water rates have been a hotter and hotter topic lately in the news, at water conferences, at city council meetings. And when we talk with our customers, which are the cities, towns, and water companies we lend to, we often hear about rate setting struggles, especially difficulties with communicating rates and other financial information to boards, to councils, and to customers. It can be a really difficult topic to explain to people who aren't in the utility business. So I just wanted to personally encourage you to use this tool that you're going to learn about, not only for the financial information it provides, but also as a communications tool. It really makes your financial information easy to understand by displaying it in a very visual way. And so we really hope you'll use that to your advantage, and don't forget to share it with the people that you're communicating with. So with that, I will turn it back over to David with the Environmental Finance Center to jump into the webinar.
Thank you so much, Melanie. I am David Tucker. I'm a project director here at the Environmental Finance Center at UNC-Chapel Hill and have headed up our Arizona project from our side. And I just want to say thank you so much to Melanie Ford and to all of her colleagues at the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona, who have just been such wonderful partners for us in this work these last few years. It's exciting to work with people who are as on the ball on everything and care so deeply about their work as the good folks at WIFA. And we really find it interesting to be working in your part of the country too, in the desert Southwest, with the different water finance and wastewater finance issues that you're dealing with there. And we're looking forward to continuing this partnership for many years to come. Before I talk about the objectives of today's webinar, I want to encourage all of you who are participating in the webinar today. If you have questions, please go ahead and type them in at any time during the webinar into your questions box there on your screen. And some questions my colleague here, Lexi, may be able to type back and answer to you directly. Others, we will have some time at the end of the hour on air to do some Q&A. Also, if you are a water or wastewater utility in Arizona and you're on the webinar right now, we'll be showing the new and improved Arizona Rates dashboard in a little while. And I'd love to have a few volunteers to say, yes, please show my rates up there so I can get a look at them and some quick analysis from David. So if you're interested in that, please go ahead and type in the name of your utility into the questions box at any time for that. So the objectives include what I was just saying, to get you familiarized with the new and improved dashboard. For those of you who saw it last year, it's going to look different because we've done a whole upgrade and overhaul on it and given it a bunch of new wonderful capabilities that we hope you will enjoy. And in so doing, we're going to give you some ability through the dashboard tool and the other tools that are deliverables from this project to better be able to compare your water system's rates with those of other systems, and perhaps even more importantly, to be able to use some of the financial key performance indicators in the dashboard to look at your system just in the context of your own system. And we have just today finally published our annual research report for Arizona water and wastewater pricing. That report will be available soon, I think later today, on WIFA's website. And we just got it up on our website before this webinar. It's got a number of new sections this year, including things like reclaimed water rates in your state of Arizona. So we'll give you a peek at that report before the end of the hour. We want to get to know you a little better, those of you who are on the webinar with us right now. So Lexi's going to launch the first polling question. We'd like to know what kind of water and or sewer systems you represent. Are you a municipally owned one, or privately owned and regulated by the Arizona Corporation Commission, or privately owned but not regulated by ACC, a special district of some kind, or perhaps you're not a water utility or wastewater utility because perhaps you're from a state government agency in Arizona or a federal agency like EPA or consulting firm.
All right.
We had a good number of responses in, Lexi? All right, so we're going to show those responses to y'all now. And it looks like we've got a nice distribution here, about half of you from municipal systems. Interesting, there's no privately owned systems that are not ACC regulated here today. But I'm glad there's a variety of folks on here. And we've got a second polling question now that Lexi's going to launch for you to respond to. We're curious to know, in this case, if you are a water or wastewater system, what size is your utility by the number of people served, not by the number of connections. So are you very small, 500 or fewer people served, small, medium, large or very large, or again, you may not be a water or wastewater utility. All right, Lexi, who have we got here today? All right, well, it looks like, again, we have a nice distribution, which is great, from the very small to the very large. And that's terrific, since we work with all of you in this project. All right, so this year, in partnership with WIFA, the Water and Wastewater Rates Survey went extremely well. We got almost 400 rate structures out of the over 350 utilities that responded, and that covers 90% of the rate charging Arizona water and wastewater utilities, or approximately 95% of all of the people served by community water systems in Arizona, as per the EPA CIDWIS database. You represent, as we were seeing a moment ago, a wide variety of different kinds of ownership types and structures, from co-ops to domestic water or wastewater improvement districts to municipalities, not-for-profits, for-profit systems, and so on. The report that I mentioned before, I'm going to extract a few pieces from it right now, including 4 observations of note. And that's the cover page to the report. So the first observation of note I want to bring out, and this is all as part of giving you all some background on what we learned from the rate survey this year before we launch into the dashboard with you. Economies of scale are evident for water services for those utilities participating in the survey, but they're not as notable for the wastewater services. So if you look at that, box there in red, for a median bill at 5,000 gallons a month. Now, granted, your typical user is going to be doing more like 7,500 gallons or more, but we're trying to keep the water and wastewater on par for this comparison here. You can see as the size gets larger, the price gets smaller. And if you look at the comparable column over to the right there, there's a little bit of that kind of trend, but it's really not as clear. So economies of scale for water, not that surprising. Interesting that it's not quite as evident for the wastewater. Looking again at pricing, at differences in rates charged by different utility types, it's hard to distinguish any kind of clear trend due to a variety of factors here. So if you're looking at the municipalities, the counties, the authorities, not-for-profits, the for-profits, the numbers kind of jump up and down there. Also, some of our survey sizes are rather small for some of these subcategories, like one authority doesn't give you a robust data set or subset to look at there. Does seem that on the whole, those rates may be a bit lower for the municipalities than for the other categories, but there's so many different factors that go into this kind of complex process of rate setting that so many of y'all are dealing with on a regular basis out in the field. You can read more about those kinds of things in our report. Another observation, our third one here, is that high water users in particular will pay more if served by a smaller utility than a larger utility. Now, we've got 3 columns here for median water bills at 0 gallons a month, in the middle at 5,000 gallons a month, on the right at 10,000 gallons a month. And that trend is fairly clear in all 3 of them, but it's most pronounced for the high water users there, the 10,000 gallons a month, where you can see it's a difference of almost $19 or $20 between the price for the smallest category there, the 1 to 999 people served, versus the largest category of the 25,000 or more served. And then finally, in terms of where are you getting your water supplies from, so if you're a purchase water system, and by that we mean you purchase at least a portion of your water from another water system, a surface water system or a groundwater system, and therefore EPA is going to regulate you as a purchase water system, then we're seeing that those kinds of systems charge the highest rates. The surface water systems charge the lowest rates, but again, the subsample sizes here are a bit skewed because of the preponderance in Arizona of groundwater systems, which are charging rates sort of in the middle there. So you also have an interesting diversity of rate structure types for the volumetric portion of your rate structures. So for your drinking water utilities, for the residential rate structures, over 3/4 of you are using increasing block rate structures out of the 349 systems responding here. A little under 1/4 are using what we call uniform rates. So it's like $5 per 1,000 gallons for every 1,000 gallons that you buy. Doesn't matter, you know, where you fall in a lower or a higher amount of consumption. And then about 2% of you are using other kinds of things, other kinds of volumetric rate structures. For the comparable wastewater rate structures, again on the residential side, almost 2/3 of you are using what we call a flat charge, non-volumetric, so it's just like, say, $50 a month and that's that. And about 1/3 of you are using uniform rates. Tiny sliver of you are using increasing block rates and 2% using other kinds of rates. Now that was about the volumetric portion. On the base charge, goes by different names. Some of you might call it a fixed charge, perhaps some other terms that you would use. But that's just a flat amount that doesn't vary that you're going to be paying each month in addition to any volumetric charges or consumption charges. So if you look at the blue bars here for the water, it clusters around that 11 to 15, 16 to 20, 21 to 25, 26 to $30 per month. And then if you look at the yellow bars for wastewater, it's a more even kind of distribution throughout those different dollar amounts. And again, all of you aren't necessarily charging monthly, but to compare apples to apples, we have rendered everything here in monthly bill equivalents. So we do have a new and improved Arizona rates dashboard this year. That's a little screenshot of it for you. You can access it by going to our website. You can also go to WIFA's website. In particular, they've created a landing page there, the /water rates, where they link to a number of things about the project this year and in the past, including the rates dashboard and the report. There also are some comprehensive rate tables if you want to page through a couple hundred pages of rate structures and bills. And afterwards, we will have in the coming days the slides and the video from this webinar posted too on our landing page for the project. Let's talk a little bit about how to benchmark rates, because after all, as you can see, everybody needs drinking water, not just us, but other animal species like these cute dogs and squirrels and monkeys and so on. Just trying to inject a little humor there. But I want to ask you one more polling question, getting to know you guys that are with us today. So Lexi's going to launch that now to find out what utility management and finance topic are you most concerned about. Now, maybe you have a topic that's not on this list, but we tried to hit what we thought would be some of the principal ones, from affordability to conservation to cost recovery to rate setting and communicating about rates. And also the special topic, if you will, from the report this year on reclaimed water.
Just give people a few more seconds. Still thinking.
Thank you, Lexi. And you know, if there's another topic that's on your mind that's important to you, you can always type that in as a comment in the questions and comments box too, just so we hear that from you.
All right.
All right, so what have we got here, Lex? We've got a lot about rate setting and communicating rates. Well, you've come to the right place for this webinar. And almost a third of you very concerned with cost recovery. That's very understandable. We want to support your work in being financially sustainable across time. And then some on the other categories as well. Well, that's excellent. Thank you for responding there. So in terms of benchmarking rates, this is an actual grab from the headlines back about 8 years ago story from a utility, not in your state of Arizona, but a utility that shall remain nameless, that put out a news flash saying, you know, gosh, we've just got the lowest rates around, and we're really excited about that. Now, I'm a customer too. I buy water and wastewater services myself, and all other things being equal, I like it when my bills are lower than higher, but it's not much of a benchmarking approach, is it? Because it doesn't say anything about is their operating ratio in good shape? You know, are they covering their expenses for operations and maintenance and for capital? You know, the rates may be low, but what is the ability to pay of the customer in this community? So here's another way to compare rates. Just, you know, choose a bill amount, like say 7,500 gallons per month for water, line it up on a graph here, and then you just see the heights of those bars for all those different utilities. But that's also not such a great way to go. And why not? It's a poor sample selection. You know, what types of systems do we have here? Wasn't very many on that last slide. We're only comparing one bill amount instead of multiple bill amounts. There's nothing that are being compared besides rates there. What about the financial condition, the ability to pay? What about conservation pricing signals and things of that sort? So years ago, we used to do these rate tables, and we still publish them, but that was kind of our primary way of conveying the results of our rate surveys here in North Carolina. And, you know, there are other things you can do than look through 185 pages of wonderful tables. You might end up looking like this guy if you try and look at all of that. So we came up with our interactive rates dashboard concept. So we have water rates dashboards now for, I think, 11 states plus one for Canada, and we've got a couple more states coming out soon. They're free online, open to the public tools. They compare rates against multiple characteristics on utility finances, system characteristics like, you know, your size, and geographic characteristics, where you're located, socioeconomic conditions like what's the median household income for your approximate service area. And we compare you, or allow you with the dashboard tool to compare yourself to similar utilities by what we call comparison groups, so subgroups of the overall survey responders. So similar service population, similar water source, same rate structure, etc. One of the new ones that we added a year ago was climate zone, which is still there, and one of the new ones we added this year was what congressional district you're in, if that's of interest to you. This year, we're almost there to showing you the actual dashboard, but I just want to tell you a little bit about what's new about it this year. We've added a financial benchmarks tab, a separate tab on the dashboard with 4 financial key performance indicators. We've switched our behind-the-scenes technology, which we're in the process of doing gradually for all our dashboards to give you much faster load and response times. You're going to have an easier time selecting yourself from the drop-down menu. For example, you can now start typing in the name of your utility. You can click on and select any utility on the map. You can use it with your tablet device like an iPad. Last year, you could see the rates on the consumption slider by every 1,000 gallons per month. Now we've made it a little more granular. You can do it by every 500 gallons per month, still ranging between 0 and 15,000 gallons per month. And there's an ability to temporarily edit your utility's data only on your own computer. It's saved with cookies, so we'll stay there until you delete your cookies. So only you will be seeing that, but we'll demonstrate that capability as well. All right, so now it's time to demonstrate the new and improved Arizona Residential Water and Wastewater Rates dashboard. And here it is. When you first power it up after you hit the little OK button, it comes up with the one that is first there in the alphabetical list, which this year's Abra Water Company. But I want to show you the made-up example utility here. So I can, you know, scroll down to any utility that I want here, but obviously you can see where it says example, but let's say that was buried somewhere farther down the list. You can just start typing the word and you see it's a keyword search there. It doesn't even have to be the first word. So, you know, if it's got utility in the name of it anywhere, it'll come up that way. So you can also, like I was saying, you can point at, a little bit tricky maybe, but you can point at here and click on the map. It's easier to do the type in, but that'll also take you to one of the utilities that way. All right, there we go. So that took us to Ajo Improvement Company. But we're going to go back to the example utility. All right, so some basics about how the dashboard works here. And again, a reminder, if you have questions, please type them in at any time. If you'd like to volunteer to have yours shown on the screen, please type that in as well. Look in the upper left-hand side of the dashboard with me, if you will, and you can select the water service or the sewer service or the combined water and sewer bill. In this case, let's just start with water here. Here's a consumption slider. It's currently set to 7,500 gallons. We can slide it all the way to 0, where essentially you're seeing the base charge if your rate structure has one. I can slide it all the way up to 15,000, and let's go back to 7,500. You've got 4 dials on the right side here. The bill comparison dial here shows you the median is currently $40.58. This made-up example utility is just a few cents below that, so it's almost at the median. This dark green area in the middle, that's the middle 50% of the data. In the lower left part of this dial, that yellow, that's the bottom 10%, and over here on the right side in the yellow, we've got the top 10%. We also have these little handy-dandy help buttons that you can click on here and get a little bit of explanation about each dial and how it works. So this is comparing you to all of the utility rate structures in your chosen comparison group. And actually, I'll need to bring up a real utility to show you the comparison group, so we'll do that a little later. As for the dials here on the Rates tab, the conservation signal dial in the upper right corner, that is showing you the strength or the weakness of the pricing signal that you are sending to your customers, going from 10,000 gallons to 11,000 gallons. So at a higher, more discretionary or perhaps a non-essential level of water usage for a typical residential household. And we've divided the dial up into 4 colors, 4 color bands. There's basically 4 quarters or quartiles. So in the darker yellow, these would be the folks who are sending the 1/4 of the price signals that are the lowest or the weakest. And here in the dark green, the 1/4 of the pricing signals that are the strongest, that are saying, hey, maybe you don't need that 11th or 12th or 13th or 14,000 gallons of water this month. Lower right corner, the affordability dial. Well, affordability is a complicated question, and there's quite a few ways to look at it. So this is intended to get you started into that conversation, investigation. And what we're doing here is we're taking a year of your bills, and we're dividing it by the median household income that we've gotten from the Census Bureau that we've used to as closely approximate your service area as we can. And in case you're wondering what that MHI is, you can click over here to the Characteristics tab, and you'll see the MHI for this made-up utility is around $44,500 a year, which is almost $5,000 a year less than the average around the state of Arizona. You may also want to look at other things, you know, poverty rates, which in fact we have that on the Characteristics tab there too. You may want to look at, you know, percentage of participants in certain federal relief kinds of programs like food stamps, etc. But MHI is a good place to start. And then this 4th dial here we have on cost recovery. This is an operating ratio. It's a capital inclusive, and what I mean by that is it's including depreciation and amortization costs in the operating ratio as a proxy, if you will, for the kinds of long-term capital costs you may have for your system. So in the red area, that means you're below 1, so you're not breaking even inclusive of depreciation. In this little yellow area, then yes, you're doing that, but we start the green area at 1.2. The idea there being that if you're bringing in enough revenue from your rates to meet those costs and then another 20% or more on top of that, it's more likely that you are being able to sock away money into your capital improvement fund for the longer term to deal with those major capital expenses that are definitely coming to you sooner or later. You can also simulate a rate increase with this slider bar in the lower left below the map, which can go all the way up to 100%. And now, unlike last year, you can see this little tiny line. That's where you started from before you slid the rate increase bar up. And so you can see how far things have moved. I mean, all the dials are moving. We also program in a bit of elasticity, if you will, there, basically saying the more you charge, the less people buy. So for every 10% increase in rates, we project a 3% drop in demand. You would know better on the ground what would actually happen in your service area, but again, it's a starting point. Now that's just one financial dial. I was talking about new things this year. Here's the new financial benchmarks tab. And at this point, I'd kind of like to switch to a real utility. Do we have a volunteer, Lexi?
Sure, we have a few. Let's start with the town of Clarkdale.
Okay. So you see, all we have to do is just type in Clark, not even the entire name Clarkdale. And let's actually come back to the financial benchmarks dial in just a moment here. So Clarkdale, you guys offer drinking water service. And feel free to type into the questions box if you feel this is not your typical consumption amount, you know, your typical residential bill. But we'll go with $7,500 for the time being. So your bill is on the high side in our comparison group. $68 a month, so it's above the median. However, your cost recovery is in really excellent shape, which makes me wonder if you are in the process of socking away some money for a capital improvement project that's coming up. You're sending a strong price conservation signal in that top quartile to your customers. So promoting good, responsible stewardship of the scarce water resource. On the affordability side, for your median or typical customer, it's getting a little pricey there, almost 2%. And I'm going to click on the characteristics tab and see, yeah, your MHI is almost $9,000 less than the statewide average MHI, so that does make it a little harder to begin with. Let's see, do you offer wastewater services? Yes, you do. And you can see, because it's typical for municipalities like Clarkdale in Arizona to have separate enterprise funds for those separate water and wastewater services, you can see that the cost recovery dial just moved there along with the other dials because it's a different proprietary fund. So probably, since your conservation signal is 0, this is a demonstration of one of the comparison groups, the same rate structure group. So this is all rate structures that are flat fee. And it goes to 0 there because everyone in this comparison group is at 0. So the service is not quite as high compared to other systems. It's a bit more affordable than the water side is for you. But your cost recovery, including depreciation, is below 1. But this is a good point to segue over to the financial benchmarks dial. So on the left-hand side here, we have a different kind of operating ratio. This is one that does not include depreciation. And in some cases, it's good to look at this one, because if you already have a bunch of capital projects lined up and you've got, you know, cash funding, you've got loan funding, maybe you've got a WIFA as your funder through SRF funds, then you don't want to double count things by looking at lots of depreciation at the same time that you're already doing a lot of financing for capital improvements. So this is showing that you're well above 1 where you meet your operating and maintenance expenses. You're at 1.34. You're not at 50% above that, where we tend to start that green range. But these colors are our broad attempts to help everyone with these questions, but you've got some, better idea of what your own system's best needs are. Now, if you have any long-term capital debt, then you'll show up on the debt service coverage ratio dial here, and it looks like you're carrying some long-term debt for the Wastewater Enterprise Fund here. And if you're not familiar with this term of what a debt service coverage ratio is, I just clicked on the little help button. So it's basically your operating margin, so your operating revenues minus operating expenses, not including depreciation, divided by the sum of your principal and interest payments on the long-term debt. So it is good to see that one at 1.0 or above. This one is well below that. And it's not uncommon around the United States that some funders may, before they will consider you, among their other tests, approvable for additional debt for you to hit that 1.25 or greater mark there. It's going to depend on the funder, though. We also have one measurement of liquidity. There are other kinds out there, like quick ratio, but what we've got here is days of cash on hand. And again, I'm going to click on the help box there. It's basically your unrestricted cash and investments, so not your restricted funds, not prepaids or things that can't be easily liquidated quickly like cash, divided by your operating expenses, again excluding depreciation and amortization, divided by the 365 days of the year. So if you've got a year or more, we're going to put you in this dark green range. And Clarkdale, in your Wastewater Enterprise Fund, you've got very good days of cash on hand there. And then this is the dial that you saw on the rates tab here. This is the cost recovery dial that includes depreciation. We're just showing it to you again on this dial. Now you can also, because we've been looking at wastewater this whole time, you can also look at just water, which is, say, drinking water. You can see the dials move, or you can look at the sum from the two funds. There's also a links tab that you may want to look at, and it's a link to WIFA, our funder and partner here, the other partnering organizations that we mentioned, and some resources, including you can click here to go to the web page where you can sign up for direct technical assistance if you're a small system serving 10,000 or fewer people. And we're going to talk about that again at the end of the webinar. You can also click here and email me feedback or comments, which I'll also be sharing with Melanie Ford at WIFA. Now, there's one other capability I want to show you here quickly about the dashboard, and then see if we can put up a couple more examples too before we show you a quick peek at the reclaimed water rates from the report. So supposing you want to enter a utility that is not in the rates survey at all, or you want to start with the current one, like Clarkdale here, and you want to, quote, clone it. Now again, this is only going to appear on your own machine. No one else is going to see it. It's only going to stay on your machine until you clear your cookies. But you could use this to do some scenario simulations here. So I'm not saying that this is not prescriptive, saying that Clarkdale needs to raise their rates. I'm just saying that if they wanted to simulate that, like let's say they said, oh, we need to raise our wastewater rates here a bit, to like, you've done the back-end analysis and you say $55 for a monthly bill, and then let's say that you've got a new annual financial report that just came out, like for 2015, your auditor just finished it, and let's say your operating rate revenues went up to 1.5 million, and your expenses went up to $1 million, and then you save it, and then it visualizes here. Now you can't do the comparison groups when you're doing one of these temporarily add your own utility, but you'll see how the dials move around from that for water and sewer. So you can use that for simulating scenarios yourself. Lexi, do we have another volunteer to put up here?
We do, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce it, but I think it's Northern Gila County Sanitary.
All right. There we go, Northern Gila County Sanitary District. All right, so I can see you're a sanitary district that offers drinking water services and also wastewater services. And let's take it back from the same rate structure comparison group to all utilities. It's usually a good place to start. Oh, I think I misspoke here. It looks like you're only offering the wastewater services. In any event, what do we see here? Well, let's slide the wastewater down to 5,000 because that's probably, I should have done that a minute ago, that's probably going to be a more typical monthly wastewater usage for an average system. We see that you've got a $20 bill here, and in fact it must be a flat charge because it's $20 no matter where we slide things here, but we'll still move it back to 5,000 gallons. Because it's a flat charge, you know, the conservation signal dial is just going to read 0 there. Affordability looks to be in pretty good shape here, 0.6% of MHI, which is it's a good deal lower than the state average, but still your customer has got a pretty affordable bill there. The cost recovery, including depreciation, seems a little lower than would normally be advisable, but this is the point at which let's go to financial benchmarks. So without depreciation, you know, it's almost at that nice 1.5 mark. Debt service coverage is in very good shape. Perhaps you just have a very small loan that you're servicing right now. Liquidity is in pretty amazing shape. Looks like you've got several years worth of days cash on hand. And you know, I talked about these different comparison groups. We can see from the characteristics tab, actually we can't. Unfortunately, we don't have your number of accounts or service population here, but most of the sanitary districts don't tend to have a huge amount. We could go by similar revenue generation. We'll do that. And so you can see if the dials move around very much for these top two, because these top two dials are benchmarking against your peers. The bottom two are just against these kind of absolute numbers, standards, if you will. And Lexi, I think I see we got a third volunteer here too.
We do, Town of Clifton.
All right. Clifton. All right, let's see. Clifton probably offers, no, Clifton does not offer drinking water service, or else we don't have the data. So again, on the wastewater side, again at 5,000 gallons for Clifton, looks like you guys too have fairly low rates compared to your peers, fairly affordable rates. The cost recovery is looking pretty low, and that's true whether we include depreciation or whether we don't include depreciation. So that looks like potential serious red flag going forward for the capital, you know, and even just for the operations and maintenance costs for the wastewater enterprise fund there. So probably you're doing something currently to plug the leak, you know, subsidizing it from another revenue source like the general fund, and that's not generally considered to be a best practice among enterprise fund theory. Seems like on an affordability basis and compared to your peers basis around the state, there is the possibility for some rate increases there. Of course, you may also want to look for some cost-saving measures too, if you haven't done that already, on water loss reduction or energy management. But I think hopefully y'all get the general idea of how the new and improved rates dashboard works. Faster, more financial KPIs, easier to find yourself. And I want to get back to the slide presentation here and talk to you a little bit about the new sections in the report. So with some great help from our partners at WIFA and also AMWA, the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, gave us some nice feedback on the reclaimed water section of the report too, so we appreciated that. Let's just focus in on that one area. There are some other new portions to the report this year. There's a lot more historical rates info looking at last year versus this year. There's also now a commercial water rates section, and there's a watershed map in the section and a table there. But on reclaimed water, such an interesting topic. Clearly very important topic in the desert Southwest, especially in your state of Arizona there. So we managed to collect some unique reclaimed water rates from about 3 dozen of your systems out there. And through your Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, that wastewater gets treated to a permit level ranging from A+ to C. And in Arizona, it appears that among other uses, some of your more common uses are for environmental restoration, groundwater recharge, industrial uses, landscape irrigation such as of golf courses or commercial properties, and power generation. And I just learned in the last few days from AMWA that in fact you have evidently the only nuclear power plant in the world that is cooled from reclaimed water rate, including a contract with a bunch of AMWA's members. So that's really interesting. On the rate structures, what we found was out of the 35 of you who have reclaimed water rates, so it's treated wastewater, you know, not usually considered potable water. It may actually be treated to a level where it could be in theory, but your state law in Arizona doesn't permit its use as potable water at the present time. But we saw the largest concentration of you were for-profit utilities, then a dozen of you were municipalities, and then a handful of districts of different kinds. And that reclaimed water is an attractive opportunity to many of you there because it's more cost effective. So if you look at that purple band and the purple line down at the bottom, that is looking at consumption ranging from 0 to 500,000 gallons per month. That's the range of prices we see. The dark purple line is the median. Then the blue area above it, you know, you can see the price going much higher, the price range. They do overlap a little bit there with that other color purple, but the medians and the range are much higher for commercial water rates. So there's more that we say in the report about reclaimed water and all the other topics. Feel free to go look at that. Also, you know, feel free to go look at our blog. You may want to sign up for that. And you may also want to go to our small systems website there. So Lexi's going to launch a polling question now to ask you, would you like to subscribe to our Environmental Finance Center's blog? It's a very active blog. We don't sell your email address to the Russians or anything crazy like that. We just sign you up for the blog. We cover different topics from water and wastewater finance to stormwater, energy finance, across a range of different topics, and pretty much all of us here at the EFC chime in with someone posting at least once a week. So we're not going to put those results up on the screen, of course, but those of you who answer yes, we will gladly subscribe you to our blog, which my good colleague here, Lexi, manages and coordinates for us.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Now, the Small Systems Project, that's our project we're working on nationwide with the other environmental finance centers around the country in all 50 states, including yours in Arizona. If you are a system that has drinking water and serves 10,000 or fewer people, we have all kinds of resources, different webinars and workshops and direct technical assistance. And it's not too late because this project ends at the end of this calendar year, at the end of December. So if you're interested in some direct technical assistance with rate setting, financial planning, capital planning, energy management, water loss reduction, any of these things you see up on your screen here, you can go to that website and type it in to the request form there. Also, Lexi's going to launch one more polling question right now where you can click yes and put your name in the hat, and we will get back to you soon to try and see if we can help you out there. It's free to you because it's funded through our grant from US EPA, and it provides for up to 20 hours of our personnel's time here to help you. Now, I do say it's free. We will need some time from you and some data to orient us to what the issues are, but there's no dollar charge to you for that. If it's still not clear to you from what I'm saying here, click on the not sure, and we'll contact you and figure out if there's a good fit there or not.
Okay, just a few more seconds. All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, and now is a good time for your questions, and if I can help you on air, I will. Might also direct some of them to Melanie Ford at WIFA if that's appropriate. But do we have some questions in from the field here, Lexi?
Not too many yet. We have a clarifying question from earlier in the webinar, just the difference between a sanitary district and a wastewater district.
Right. I might actually ask Melanie to speak to that in just a moment. I do know that in the state of Arizona, on the one hand, you have these domestic water improvement districts and domestic wastewater improvement districts. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you have sanitary districts. They're all different kinds of special purpose districts. There are some differences between how the DWIDs operate, I believe, in the sanitary districts. Melanie, is that something that you would like to speak to for a moment?
Sure, I can just briefly add that, for all intents and purposes, they're very similar, as far as the services they provide. The main differences are really in the statutory details as far as, how they have to conduct their voting and their elections and what kind of debt they can pledge and things like that. But I think for most purposes, they're very similar.
We also have got a request to go back to the dashboard and show another system. So if you'll bear with me as I switch screens over there, we will do exactly that. All right, so we have another one of the municipalities in the state of Arizona. We have Cottonwood here. Cottonwood, which offers wastewater services and drinking water services here. So looking at your rates in Cottonwood, we see that compared to all utilities in the survey, you're only slightly above the median, a few dollars above the median. You're sending a conservation pricing signal, slide it back up to $7,500 a month, but you're still only slightly above the median there. You're sending a conservation pricing signal that's in the next to the highest quarter of the data. So definitely trying to help your customers think about some of that non-discretionary higher levels of water usage. In the affordability area, it looks like it's a little pricey for your median customer, and that looks like one of the main reasons is because the MHI that is approximate to your service area is about $15,000 below the average for the state of Arizona. The cost recovery is in very good shape, including depreciation is at 1.4, well into that green range. Now that's the drinking water side. Let's look at the wastewater side of things. The corresponding wastewater bills here, and let's slide it down to 5,000 gallons a month, are correspondingly a bit less expensive compared to the other systems in the survey. Looks like it is a flat rate since we've got a $0 conservation signal there. And then for the affordability, it's right around 1%, so compared to the drinking water rates, this is more affordable. And then the cost recovery is a little below 1, including depreciation. We'll go over here to the financial benchmarks dials. You're definitely bringing in enough revenue to meet your operating and maintenance expenditures for the Wastewater Enterprise Fund. But I guess the one thing I would wonder about is, are you adequately providing for future capital needs there? And if we look at the two funds combined, the combined picture, of course, you do need to evaluate things separately too, but the combined picture looks pretty good. And there it is on the rates tab. Going back just to water for a moment here and sliding back to 7,500 gallons, I think we've got same water source here. All right, you're a groundwater system. I was wondering if you were maybe a purchased water system, since those tend to be more expensive source water. I'm going to look at the characteristics tab again too, and the poverty rate is a good deal higher, about 4% higher than the state average there. So this is the kind of thing that, systems, I know I'm only giving you a minute or two here on the air, but systems like Clifton, Cottonwood, Clarkdale would like to talk more to us. Again, if you're a small system, definitely contact us because we can help you out under that project. If you're not a small system, you can contact us anyway. We'll see what we can do. Need to find a different way to cover that in terms of our time here. But I do want to make sure before we run out of time here in the hour that we go back to the slide presentation and say thank you. I want to say thank you to all of you who are on the webinar with us today. Thanks for attending. I want to say thank you to Melanie Ford, the project coordinator, technical program supervisor, I should say, but my counterpart at WIFA on this project, who's just been great to work with. Lexi K. Herndon here at the EFC and Susan Craig at WIFA have helped a lot with getting the word out about this project. And to all of you at WIFA who fortunately got an opportunity to meet in person this June when came out to do a workshop with my colleague Glenn Barnes there. It was great to meet y'all. Really looking forward to doing more research and advising and technical assistance in your state. If you have a question that we didn't get to on air here, we will follow up to you off air. Again, if you'd like to go back and see the slides and the video, they'll be posted within a few days to our website. The report is there, the tables are there on our website, and you can access all of this through WIFA's website at their page that they have on this work. So thank you all for being with us here today. It's amazing how fast the hour has gone by, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care.